Mathai Paranan Abraham Sumanthiran, or M.A. Sumanthiran, a noted Sri Lankan lawyer, politician, and a member of parliament belonging to the Jaffna district. Mr. Sumanthiran is in Colombo and I'm in New Delhi, of course. So we are joining the time zones also, although the time zone between India and Sri Lanka is exactly the same. And today we're discussing the very fast moving, the rapidly moving developments in Sri Lanka these last few days. Finally, there is a new Prime Minister, Ranil Wickremesinghe, the sole member of parliament from the opposition party, the UNP, as Prime Minister. But before I get ahead of myself, Mr. Sumanthiran, welcome to The Print.
Hi, good to be on the show.
So tell me, sir, your first comments on these developments, your first comments on the elevation of Ranil Wickremesinghe as Prime Minister of Sri Lanka for the 5th time.
Well, I have to say it in two sections. One is that the country is in deep economic peril and must quickly move forward with political stability in order to address the economic calamity that has hit the country. And from that perspective, we welcome the move by His Excellency to appoint a Prime Minister. And hopefully he'll appoint a cabinet today and move forward with handling those urgent issues. But the other side of this is that this is wholly undemocratic. The president has lost his mandate. The whole political crisis in Sri Lanka is because the people are asking the president to leave office. And they are undeterred by anything. For over a month, they are protesting on the streets. They have camped outside his secretariat and all of that. And then he goes and now appoints a person as Prime Minister who couldn't even win his own seat in parliament at the last general election. We have a PR system and it's 19 members are elected from the Colombo district. He couldn't even get in as the 19th member into parliament. He was wholly rejected. His party, which had ruled the country for several years, did not even win one seat in parliament.
Right.
His national list, taking into account the overall votes that they had got nationally. And almost after a year of leaving that seat vacant, he came into parliament as a national list MP.
Right.
So we have as president somebody who has just lost his mandate, and we have as prime minister somebody who never had a mandate.
But Mr. Sumanthiran, can I argue, and of course you're in the thick of things, your political affiliation is with the Tamil National Alliance, your political party is the Ilankai Tamil Arasu Katchi, and the reason I'm saying this is because you have a close, you've been member of parliament twice around, you have a close connection with India, you've studied at the University of Madras. But my question to you is, and if I'm going to play devil's advocate, there is a severe economic crisis, like you said yourself. So perhaps President Gotabaya Rajapaksa is doing the best he can, which is to get somebody who's got experience. He's been Prime Minister 4 times before. Of course, he was dismissed 2 out of those 4 times. But in today's situation, when the opposition is also divided, what else can he do except appoint somebody who, he has a safe pair of hands, and somebody who's got experience and perhaps bring everyone together?
Well, I might agree with you partially on that. Just a small correction. Mr. Wickremesinghe has been Prime Minister 5 times before, and this is the 6th time.
Okay.
World record, it was for the 5th time when he became Prime Minister. So he's broken his own record. And as for myself too, this is the 3rd term in Parliament.
Sorry about that.
No, that's all right. So the thing is, we recognize that he is a person with experience. No one can match his experience in these times. That is why, as a first section, I said that, you need a government, and perhaps the president is justified in appointing him. But the country is not hit only by an economic crisis. The country is hit by a deep political crisis as well. The former Prime Minister who resigned last Monday is in hiding. Right,
Mahinda Rajapaksa, you're talking about, who's at a naval base in Trincomalee.
Well, we are not very sure about that. Some say he's in Jaffna, in Palali Air Base now. So they keep shifting him around. That's the extent of the political crisis. And his younger brother is the president. And even at that time, the call of the people was not so much that Mahinda should resign. The call was for the president to resign. More than 99% was the president should resign, and that call is still out there.
So can I interrupt you for a second? Is there some concern in Sri Lanka today that Mahinda Rajapaksa could flee the country?
Yes, there is concern, and the Attorney General has moved court yesterday and obtained a travel ban on Mahinda Rajapaksa, his close family members, and some of his close acolytes.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think is likely to happen? Because he cannot get out unless the president allows him to leave. So how do you think this is going to unfold?
He cannot get out through the usual channels. Of course, he can disappear. The president is in charge. He can get into a ship and get away. That's possible. He might just about do that, I think.
You think he could do that?
Yeah, he can do that. The reason why he first goes to the naval base in Trincomalee, then he goes to the Air Force base in Jaffna, which also has a seafront. Maybe that. So court order stopping him from leaving the country won't be effective at all if his brother facilitates him to flee the country. So this is the situation. So we have a rogue government with the people sent out. And unfortunately, Mr. Wickremesinghe has gone and joined that government. But be that as it may, I'm in agreement with you that the economic situation must be handled. And insofar as Mr. Wickremesinghe handles those matters properly, he will have all our support on that.
Okay.
Without compromising our position that he is an illegitimate prime minister.
So if Mr. Wickremesinghe now calls for an all-party meeting and asks for recommendations for a way forward, you would be happy to join that all-party meeting?
We will cooperate in that. There is no question about that.
You will cooperate?
We will cooperate. We have been cooperating with the president only because he now occupies the office of president. Although we tell him that he was the actual reason for this economic collapse, the most proximate and the immediate cause for the collapse of the economy was the president's actions. And so there is no two words about that. So he must take responsibility and resign. He can't sit there and then bring another person who was outrightly rejected by the people and expect political stability. For economic stability, you need political stability first.
Right.
Merely stitching together 113 members of parliament and showing numbers in parliament doesn't give the country political stability. So far as people stand on the streets and say Gota go home and Ranil go home, there is no political stability. So that will affect the economic stability as well.
So first things first, Mr. Sumanthiran, should Gota go home? Should Gotabaya Rajapaksa leave his seat and get off the throne of the presidency?
Of course he should. He should have gone 1 month ago. I don't know why he's still there.
But he's also now saying a couple of days ago when he addressed the nation on television, he promised to bring about reforms. And that perhaps includes the fact that his own very powerful position as the executive president will be curtailed. So I imagine that there will be a 21st Amendment of the Constitution, which will then pave the way for a sort of a more prominent parliamentary system.
So we tried to work out an honorable exit for him by getting him to agree that he will abolish the executive presidency. That's the 21st Amendment that is now pending in Parliament, and give a time frame so that the post itself is abolished and that it is not personal.
Right.
But he did not agree to that.
When did you do this?
Well, that was a condition that the opposition leader put forward to him. I know that was those overtures were made to him by various people, individually also, and apparently he agreed. But when the two opposition parties, the Janata Vimukti Peramuna and the Samagi Janabalavegaya, said that he must step down, he didn't agree. And then the opposition leader 3 days ago communicated with him and said, at least give a time frame for your exit and a time frame for the passage of this legislation. He was unwilling to do that.
You're talking about Sajid Premadasa, who's the leader of the opposition, Samagi Janabalavegaya. Yes?
That's right. Yes.
But don't you feel, Mr. Sumanthiran, that the opposition, you, including your own Tamil National Alliance, you're not pressing the point enough? Why should Gotabaya Rajapaksa just leave? And the opposition isn't, you know, you're not doing enough to unseat him and to create an alternative.
We are doing. We have brought a vote of no motion of no confidence on the president. The speaker amended it to say vote of displeasure or something. Whatever it is an expression that the parliament has no confidence in him anymore. That is coming up in parliament on the 17th, coming Tuesday.
But that's hardly going to unseat him, is it?
No, it won't unseat him. He doesn't have to resign. But as it is with no confidence motions on a minister, for instance, that also doesn't require the minister to resign. But democratic tradition has it that if that is passed, that they stand down immediately. Because Article 42 of our Constitution very specifically says the president is responsible to Parliament for the due exercise of his duties, functions, and powers. And if Parliament says we have no confidence in the president, surely he must stand down.
But the fact remains that if you know, you have said that he is not about to listen to any parliamentary or democratic proprietary. He is here. He is a powerful president of Sri Lanka. What if he doesn't step down? Then what happens?
Then the protests in the country will keep going. It will go on and on and on. There won't be political stability in the country. As long as there is no political stability in the country, you will not be able to do anything about the economic situation.
So now the curfew is being lifted for a few hours at a time so that people can get out and buy their food items and other essentials. But how far do you think this is going to go? And are you waiting till Tuesday for this vote of no confidence? Will there be meetings before that? Will Ranil Wickremesinghe call meetings and you will attend them? Is there some sort of a solution that's likely to take place?
You see, when the vote of no confidence on the president was brought, when it was drafted itself, Ranil Wickremesinghe, without anybody even asking for his comments, issued 2 statements saying he will vote for it, that he will support it. I wonder what he's going to do on Tuesday when the matter comes up in Parliament.
But even if he changes his mind, so what?
Will he keep his word and vote for the no confidence motion on the president, or only because the change now is that he has been given the post of prime minister, will he not vote? That's a question. So this is the kind of political instability that the country is reeling under.
Even if he doesn't vote in favor of the vote of no confidence, how does that going to impact the opposition's move to create or to give recommendations for a way forward? That's hardly going to impact it, is it?
We have given our recommendations for way forward. All that has been done, but it has been implemented by the executive. It has been implemented by the government.
What are your recommendations?
This was a powerful government. It was a stable government with over 150 seats in parliament, 2/3 majority, right? And it just collapsed. People from the government walked out. Why did they walk out? Because they sensed that the people had turned against this government. Right? So you need to hear the voices of the people. Ranil Wickremesinghe couldn't have become prime minister if that people's movement hadn't started. So Ranil Wickremesinghe himself must hear the voice of continue to hear the voice of the people. He heard it for a while. Now that he's prime minister, he can't shut his ears to it.
So the minimum that you expect is for Gotabaya Rajapaksa to hand in his resignation and to step down?
That's right.
And for Ranil Wickremesinghe, or could that be a temporary?
He will then act as president according to the constitution, and then the parliament will elect a new president.
So let me just say that again because I lost you for a second. Gotabaya Rajapaksa steps down, and according to the constitution, Ranil Wickremesinghe, now Prime Minister, becomes president. Yes?
He acts in the office of president, and immediately thereafter, Parliament must elect a president.
So the Tamil National Alliance, Mr. Sumanthiran, what do you feel? Do you feel that this is the time to heal the ethnic divide between Sinhala and Tamil, which is sort of like an undercurrent that plays across the Sri Lankan political class? Or can you talk to me a little bit about this?
Yeah, I think this is the ideal time to settle those as well, because we have seen very positive sentiments coming from the people who are involved in the protests. We have seen them holding placards, apologizing to the Tamil people for decades of injustice and discrimination perpetrated on the Tamil people. They have specifically mentioned various events, and they have said, we are a new generation, we will change all of that. I'm not saying that that's this sort of overwhelming sentiment, but though we have seen those, and those are very, very important. So the political class, as you call it, have been, misleading the people up to now. Now that the people themselves have come out and they're expressing these sentiments, we see a ray of hope. This is the time to settle all those differences.
So are the people also talking about the civil war that ended in 2009 when the LTT was crushed? But yeah, unfortunately, the injustices against the Tamil community still continued.
That's right. They're talking about that and the way it was crushed and how scores of civilians were killed. They are apologizing for that. They are saying, we did not speak up then. We now realize that that was our mistake. All of that is being said. I mean, it may be small voices in some corners, but nevertheless, it's being said publicly, and nobody else is objecting when those voices are heard. So I think there is a very definite moment of opportunity to change that dynamics as well.
So that's my question, that these voices are emerging from Colombo's articulate middle class, urbanized middle class that doesn't perhaps represent feelings across the country. I mean, we've seen arson and looting. The Rajapaksas' ancestral home was torched, as well as property has been damaged, including that owned by the ruling party. I mean, these are not good signs, are they?
No, not good signs at all. In fact, we have condemned that violence also, the original violence perpetrated by Rajapaksas, and the counter violence. Violence is no answer. And the protesters, of course, have been exemplary in their conduct. They did not even hit back. They suffered serious injuries, and they are continuing with their peaceful protests. It's heartwarming now to see that the country's Attorney General has recognized that. The Bar Association, the unofficial bar, has always stood by them. And yesterday we saw the first time the Attorney General and the Bar Association going to court and ask for action against those who perpetrated violence against peaceful protesters. They said these were peaceful protesters.
So you're talking about the ruling party supporters who perpetrated violence against the peaceful protesters. Is that correct?
That's right. Mahinda Rajapaksa called his supporters for a meeting to his official residence, gave them lunch and perhaps other accompaniments as well, and then set them loose on these peaceful protesters.
So just the last couple of questions, Mr. Sumanthiran. What about in Jaffna district, your MP from Jaffna? Are these feelings in Tamil-dominated Jaffna, what's the situation there like?
Well, mostly people from the north and the east are viewing these development with a little amusement. That this happened to them 100-fold more. Nobody took any notice, nobody cared. Well, now it's happening. But at the same time, I must say that the new generation views it slightly differently. They feel sort of as kindred spirits with the demonstrators. They want to join them. They want to be part of the mainstream, and so on. So, I mean, the memories of the past is very difficult to leave it. It's very, I mean, it's only 10, 12 years ago. Uh, so they remember that.
But
But
why amusement? Why are people amused at what's happening?
amused because all these demonstrations started because people did not have cooking gas for 1 week. Petrol and diesel were hard to get for about 2 weeks. When for 20 long years they did not have a drop of petrol or a drop of diesel and no electricity at all for 20 years.
Mhm.
And they did not see a gas cylinder in those years. So they survived. So that's why the amusement. What we endured for 20 long years, these people can't endure for 2 weeks.
Mhm. So let me ask you the India question. India has studiously refused to talk about the Rajapaksas, although there has been a lot of collaboration between India and Sri Lanka under the Rajapaksa government these last few years. How do you look at what India is doing? Of course, India is very closely watching the situation, but what is your comment?
Well, India has come to our rescue on the economic issue. I mean, it's like a lifeline. Country is alive only because of these immediate interventions of credit lines and so on that are being given monthly. So as is the case always, India is the first responder to any crisis here. So for that, we are very, very thankful. India has also taken a position and articulated it that all this assistance is for the people of Sri Lanka.
Mm-hmm.
That they are not extending any support for any side, and I think that's the right thing to do, and India would always do that. But they've also said something about democracy, that they would support them. So if that is to go by, the extension of that is that if people, if there are rulers who don't have the people's mandate, they must leave.
So you think this is indirectly a signal to the to Gotabaya Rajapaksa? Well,
I wouldn't say that myself, being a member of parliament and service what India is trying to say. But all that I can say is that comment was very very welcome.
But how is it being perceived in Sri Lanka? Is it being perceived as a sort of a subtle criticism of the manner in which the Rajapaksas have handled this?
No, not really, not really. People are wondering what that means.
And how do you look at how China is dealing with it? Again, a very powerful player in the region, a very close friend of Sri Lanka's. How do you look at how that's happened?
See, China protested when Sri Lanka went to the IMF for help, and was playing it difficult in rescheduling their debts. Mm-hmm. So to that extent, we have a problem with China right now. Although I heard lately that the Chinese ambassador has said that they will cooperate, that they will do those debts and so on. If that's the case, then that's welcome news. We need the help of everyone. This is an unprecedented economic crisis. We've never had this before. It was triggered off by the president, and he's still in office. So that is furthering the economic crisis. So he must step down first. We must have a democratic government for political stability, and we need the help of all our friends outside the country to pull us out of this mess.
So absolutely, the last question on Mahinda Rajapaksa. I mean, wherever he is, whether he's in Palali or Trincomalee, the question is, if he needs to get out of the country, first of all, you think he should get out of the country, otherwise his life is not safe inside the country?
No, I don't think so. I think he will be safe inside the country. I wouldn't want him to get out of the country without being held accountable for all his criminal actions.
But do you think that he will get out of the country and that other countries might? I mean, what are you hearing? Is he seeking the support of?
We have seen despots being given refuge in many parts of the world. So it won't surprise me if he goes and hides somewhere in Africa.
Is that what you're hearing, that he could go and hide somewhere in Africa? Perhaps I'm hearing Uganda. Are you hearing that?
Yeah, Uganda, because I think a lot of money was stashed away to sustain themselves for generations. So they might just about go there.
A lot of the Rajapaksas stashed money. I mean, the Rajapaksas stashed money in Uganda. Is that what you're saying?
Well, that's a speculation, because there was money carried from here to Uganda. There's a lot of evidence of that. So people are wondering whether that was part of this.
But how would you look at a third country? If you remember in 2009, when the Sri Lankan army was closing in on Prabhakaran, he was desperately in touch with third countries like India, Norway, and other countries in an effort to escape, to flee. Do you think something similar is happening now?
Could be, but the Rajapaksas are, I think, in a different position to Prabhakaran.
Of course.
Yeah, they will have friends, and they may have bought friends with their money as well. So they might be in a slightly better position to actually get away.
Do you think there is that they would have perhaps even sent messages to India or to China to ask them for support?
I don't think they would have done that. If they are actually fleeing, they'll flee to some place that's not known in the world map.
Right, Mr. Sumanthiran, your last comments. Of course, we are watching the situation, but your last comments on how you see this playing out, especially regarding Gotabaya Rajapaksa.
Well, right at the moment, we, as somebody said, I don't want to claim credit to this analogy. We thought we saw a light at the end of the tunnel, only to realize that that's the headlights of an approaching train.
On this note, Mr. M.A. Sumanthiran, the MP from Jaffna in Sri Lanka, thank you so much for your time, for speaking to us and to talk about the escalating political and economic situation and the crisis in Sri Lanka. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you.